chapter 5 was about the syntax of the language, right? I mean, before that, you have been introduced to the main function of C, and you already know that if you want to write any code, you have to write it between the opening and closing bracket. So you already know about the main, right? Imagine that you are learning a new language, and when you learn a new language, you will know some keywords there, right? Some reserve word, if I can say. You will know hi, hello in that language. You will know like I'm hungry, I want to eat. I mean the basic, right? But then you will be introduced to the grammar. In coding, we call it syntax. After that, you need to write the code. So in C, all the code must be within the opening and the closing bracket of the main function. Okay? So, of course, in English language, you are is written correctly, while you are, it is understandable for us as a human, but if you tell a computer you are, a computer will not be able to understand it, okay? So you must write it this way, or imagine that you are in English exam. So when you write you are, you shall write it this way. Otherwise, you're gonna lose some marks. Similar in C language. If you write integer like this, it is not acceptable. But you need to write it like this, int. I'm not sure if you wrote any of it before or not, but no worries, we will go for it soon. Similar, if you define a message variable, and then you try to call it as message, small letter m, you see here is capital letter and here is small letter, that is considered also an error because C language is case sensitive. So message is something and message with small letter m is something else. Sometimes we may try to follow the syntax, but we have some typo. We want to type print, for example, but when we type it, we type pring. So by mistake, we change T to be G, and that's what may cause an error. How to recognize error? You don't need much work. You just try to debug the code or run the code, and then it will tell you that, okay, there is some error. And of course, at first, you may not recognize the error because you are still at the beginning stage. But when you go, search, read, ask your lecturer, ask your classmates, have discussions with each other, that's what will make you able to recognize the errors. And of course, it is going to help you so much when you write comments in your code. So basically, statements in C language can be classified into two types. The first is declaration statements, and the second is statement. So we have declaration and the statements, two different things. It is somehow similar, but there are some differences. Basically, declaration will be to specify or define a variable, a function. We are trying to tell C language that we want to store a name inside a variable called name, or we want to store like student GPA inside an integer variable, you know? So this is what we call declaration. It is when we tell C that we are about to define something new. So when we are going to define a new variable, we need to specify the data type, and you already, I think, study about it. In C language, there are 5 types. The character, which will be enclosed between a single quotations, and it will be only one single character, such as C, A, or B, you know. There is integer, and integer is just a number, -1, -2, 0, 1, 2. Float or double, which is a floating point number, or what we call real number. So it will be a number with a fraction, 3.0 or 0.1 or 5 point something. And there is also Boolean, which is specify only 2 values, either true or false. And lastly, we have array, which is a sequence of multiple values stored together in one variable. So those are the 5 data types in C language: character, integer, floating and double, Boolean, and also array. Basically, here is the structure of data type in C language. So there are void. I will come for it later. There is a scalar type, and apart from it, the arithmetic type. Apart from it, the floating type, such as float double and long double, as well as integrals, which consist of unsigned and signed variables, which in return has character or char, short, int for integer, long, and long. There is also aggregate types such as arrays, struct, union, enum. We are not going to introduce all of these in this class. However, in your study as IT students, you are almost going to study all of it together. I mean, in this year, in second year, and in the following years. So the journey is long, but since you are trying, you are reading, you are practicing, you are gonna be a professional who know all of these things. There is also identifiers. So we said that we have declaration part or declaration statements. Declaration statements have two parts. The first is the data type and the second is the identifier. So we are going to declare or define a variable, constant, array, function. Here is an example of what variable look like. So it can be student GPA, which will calculate your GPA, okay? A constant, you know pi, right? The pi in mathematics, which is equal to 3.14, etc. That could be constant because we know that this value is fixed. It will never change. I mean, the pi value. So yeah, we can save it as or identify it as constant. There is also array as well as functions. We will come to discuss all of these in following classes. So when we talk about variables, we are talking about a box that stores some value inside it. So imagine that we have integer student's age. So it's going from the name. We know that it is going to store the age of a student. And as you can see here, we represent a box, and inside it, it has a value. As you can see here at the end of the slide, we have int student age equal 19 and then semicolon. Of course, to store the value inside the variable, we need to use the, what we call it? This one? In mathematics, we call it equal, that's right. But in programming, we call it the assignment operator. What do assignment operator do? It will tell, or the compiler is going to go at the left side of the operator and calculate the value. Here is 19, so it's going to take 19 and store it inside the variable called student age. Yeah, just now I was talking about constant, and I mentioned to you about pi. So this is pi in mathematics, right? And why we save it as constant? Because the value will never change. So we all know that pi is equal to 3.14159, blah, 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 etc., right? So when we are going to write it in our code, we need to specify as constant using const reserve word, and then double to specify the data type following with the name of the constant, which is pi, then equal the value. Okay, so we have done talking about the first part, which is the declaration statements, and the second part is C language statements. Statements in C can be one of two types. Either it will be a simple statement or compound statement. A simple statement is a statement has no block, which means it is one line of code and then followed with semicolon, such as printf, enter your GPA, as well as scanf, student GPA. So it is one or single line statement. A compound statement is a statement that has a block of code. So it will have an opening angle bracket and a closing angle bracket, and inside it or within the block of the statement will be other statements there. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show you about chapter 5. It was just a quick discussion about it.